You wear all the gear I'd love to wear, but didn't.
No.
You look wonderfully.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Now, you wouldn't be free to coach our England football team, would you? I mean, that's what they need.
Well, I don't know enough about that game yet. I've attended maybe 3 real football matches in my life, and they were all in Liverpool, so I don't know if that counts.
Our trouble is that our coach doesn't know much about the England football team either, but there we are. But that's another thing. I mean, it's a lovely, inspirational story, as I said, and a true story, too.
Yes, it is.
This did actually happen. There was a man who took over a team that was no good at all and coached them into an undefeated team, but at the same time separated the student from the athlete.
Well, he had the young men sign contracts before the basketball season started that stated that they would maintain a certain grade point average, they would go to all their classes, sit in the front row of those classes, wear ties on game days, and do community service also. And naturally, when they became the kings of the community, they figured they didn't have to do those things anymore. And Ken surprised them by holding up his end of the bargain, and he shut the team down and forfeited the games and sacrificed so that they would understand that they weren't always going to be basketball players, and some of them might not be good enough to be professional basketball players. And the only thing you have after those glory days is your education. And that will serve you better than any athletic skill you ever had.
And also, too, if you do make it, you need an education, too. You need a balanced view of what
you need to read the contract, for one thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And know how to manage your money.
That's right. This wouldn't have made Mr. Carter a very popular man in the community, of course, because we're talking about a working-class community here,
A working-class community that was used to having a losing team, and all of a sudden they're winning. They feel good about themselves. People are envisioning their kids possibly getting professional basketball contracts, them getting out of the community, getting a big house, a new car. And when you take things away from people that make them feel good, they tend not to react very well. And he owned a couple of sporting goods stores, so they were breaking out the windows of his sporting goods store and dumping trash on his lawn and spitting on his car and just doing lots of things to him.
The other interesting aspect of the film that you bring out there, and we're going to show a little scene here to back it up, is this aspect we touched upon, which is the way that these kids play the sport. That they forget, and so do we as adults watching at times, that in fact it's an entertainment.
Yes.
That it's a game in the end, and that you have to keep a sense of perspective about this. It's all about being competitive, but there's a line across which you don't go.
Yeah, exactly.
Setting up this scene, your team now are very successful. They've gone from being losers to winners.
Yeah.
You're seeing things on the court you don't like.
Yeah, they're show-offs now.
Show-offs, here we go.
What's wrong with all of you? Since when is winning not enough? Playing hard not enough? No. You have to humiliate your opponent. Taunt him after every score. You won 4 games last season. 4! What gives you the right to take the game that I love with trash talk and taunting?
It's interesting, too, as part of that kind of lecture that you give your students, there's one other very strong scene, too, where you actually talk to them about the use of the, and I can't say the word, the N-word.
Yeah.
You can say it, I can't say it.
Yeah.
But it's a very powerful scene, actually, where you say, why do you use that word about yourself?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, what's your views about that?
That throughout the years, everybody tends to think that the more you use a word, the less you empower it. And that's not necessarily true. The word is used a lot in hip-hop culture and in a lot of films. My characters have used it. I've been embroiled in controversies with Spike Lee and Quentin Tarantino about it.
Are you embarrassed when you have to do it in the movie?
Not really. If it's something my character has to say and my character is part of a cultural phenomenon that is accepting and uses the word in the correct way or in a manner that is emphasizing the point, then it's part of a freedom of speech kind of context. But when you have young people, you have to make them understand that when you empower a word, you empower everyone else to use that particular word. So you can't lose your cool or be angry when somebody else says it or uses it to describe you.
Yeah. I mean, you grew up in a segregated area. You'd have been called that, wouldn't you?
Oh, yeah, totally. I used to hear it, yelled off the bus, screamed at me, or just as a, how you doing, Yeah, it was incredible. I would walk with my grandmother, and there was a little kid that lived across the street from me. They were a very poor white family, and this little kid, I guess he didn't know any better. He was 5 or 6 years old, and if I was walking down the street with my grandmother, he would actually speak to her very cordially and say, "How are you, Miss Nigger?" You know, and I would kind of like, and my grandmother would go, "Leave him alone, don't bother him." You know, at least he said Miss. You know, it's kind of okay.
How careful did you have to be growing up as a child in a segregated area?
Well, you learn survival skills in Tennessee, and there are things that you can and can't do, things you can't and can't say. I remember vividly when I was maybe 8, 9 years old, sitting on the porch, and a young white woman was walking down the street, and I whistled at her. And before I could get the whistle out of my mouth, my grandmother, my aunt, and my mom were out the door, and they'd all snatched me in the house, and they all gave me a spanking and all told me what I'd done could get me killed. And I never did it again. But those are the kind of things that you have to learn.
But you see, what's interesting is you talk about that background of yours, and it wasn't too long ago either. We're not talking about the dim and distant.
We're talking, 30, 40 years ago. Yeah.
If I'd have said to you 30 years ago, Samuel Jackson, from that background, that you will become one day what you are now, this huge star, your films have taken more money than any other film star, what would you have said to me?
I would have said you were crazy. It's not one of the professions that you could look at during that particular era and say you could do it and become successful at it, or it was even a possibility for me to fathom myself leaving Chattanooga, Tennessee and ending up in Hollywood, California, or even being on the stage right here tonight in the United Kingdom talking to you. It was just not something I could imagine. My future was either in medicine or education. Those were the jobs that I knew that were open to me. I could be a doctor, I could be a teacher, possibly a lawyer, but you know, not many other things than that.
But you see, again, I mean, it wasn't just the background you came from. I mean, of course, your family were a decent family, they supported you, you had that amount. But I mean, you also had a stammer too, didn't you? A stutter.
Yes, I do. I still stutter when I try and talk too fast.
But you talk fast all the time.
And
You're
I'm
famous
very
for it.
conscious of it.
Are you?
know, yeah, there are moments when I have some days when I can't say words that begin with W, and I have some days that I get stuck on words with T. And I actually had a year from my 4th grade until the 5th grade where I actually didn't talk very much at school because kids laughed at me because I stuttered so badly. I had the kind of stutter where I would get stuck on a word, and it was kind of like, please! And they would just die laughing like you're doing now. And I would end up after school punching whoever was the first person that laughed at me. So I just stopped talking to avoid fighting a lot.
But when you went on stage, when you beside movies, I mean, it disappeared, did it? Is that
Well, I guess because I can absorb myself in a character to the point that the character does not stutter. I've actually portrayed a character that did stutter, and it was one of the hardest things I ever had to do because it was hard for me to stop. And I've had teachers who stuttered that I couldn't have conversations with because when they stuttered, it made me want to stutter, and I didn't want them to think I was mocking them.
The other thing that's extraordinary, again, about this career of yours, is that it began, I mean, very well, you've always been working, you've always kept in work, but you're an addictive personality. You're addicted to booze and addicted to drugs, and yet you work...
And women.
And women.
Yeah.
Well, I forgot women, yeah. But the point is, I mean, how did you manage to work throughout all this crisis in your... Was there a moment, though, when you actually took stock yourself? Was there one thing that happened that made you say, hey, stand still now, let's change?
Well, the last time I got drunk and stoned, I had gone to a bachelor party. One of my best friends was having a bachelor party. And the bachelor party was in the afternoon for some reason. And we stayed in this bar from, I guess, noon until about 5 o'clock. And I've been drinking tequila all day. And I was drunk out of my mind. So I got a cab to go home in New York. And I said to myself, well, I better get some cocaine because I'm kind of drunk. And this cocaine will level me out. So I don't remember buying it, but apparently I did. And I went home and I cooked it because I was going to smoke it. I wasn't going to just snort it. I cooked it. And when I woke up, my wife, my daughter, and my mom happened to be visiting from Tennessee. Were standing there in the kitchen. And there I was on the floor, and they were shocked to see the cooked cocaine on the table. I guess I bought some more beer and something else, too, because it was there, too. And nobody kind of knew that was what was going on. And my wife called this best friend of mine that I'd grown up with who was a drug counselor, and he was in Knoxville, Tennessee. And she called him, told him, and he talked to me on the phone, and I said, well, you know, I need to do something because I don't know what to do. And he called and got me a bed in this rehabilitation facility in upstate New York the very next day. And sitting there thinking about it, you know, once I got to rehab, I was kind of angry about it because I wasn't really ready to stop doing what I was doing. But taking stock of what had happened, of all my friends that had done some of the same things I'd done and gone on to be successful, I said, well, I've tried everything else. Maybe if I stop doing it and give myself a chance this way, maybe something will change. And inexplicably, when I got out of rehab, I ended up doing Jungle Fever.
Yes, it was about a crack addict.
2 weeks later, and it was about a crack addict,
Yeah.
a guy who smoked cocaine, and I guess I'd done all the research, and I was kind of pretty good at it when it came down to it, and my life changed. So as a direct result of me going to rehab, I ended up starting to be a lot more successful almost immediately. So when people talk about relapsing, it never occurred to me because I always see a direct correlation between getting clean and success. And when I did have urges to maybe have a drink early on, I could always say to myself, now, do I want to drink or do I want the amount of money that's in the bank right now? Because I know if I start drinking, I'm going to drink up that amount of money and I'm going to smoke it up. So do I want to live like I'm living now or do I want to go back to living like I used to live? And it's easy to make that decision. So I've never had, you know, a relapse, or I've never gone back. And I've pretty much gone past that part of my life. I like hanging out in bars with my friends, and I drink ginger ale and they drink and I don't want to drink. And, you know, drugs don't even come into the picture anymore.
It's interesting because you don't preach about it, do you?
No, not at all.
You don't join campaigns about it. So why is that? Because you had too good a time when you were on
Only
it?
because I had a great time. I had a great time for a very long time. So it's very difficult for me to tell people, you know, drugs will destroy you or drink will destroy you, because I have a lot of friends who still do drugs and they work. And I have a lot of friends who drink, but they don't drink the way I drank. I mean, I drank until everything was gone. When I went to the store and I bought 6 beers, I drank 6 beers. I didn't drink 1 and keep 4 for the rest of the week. No, I drank them until they were gone. Yeah. Or when I bought a bottle of wine, I drank it till it was empty. Or when I bought a bag of marijuana, I smoked it till it was gone. So there are people who can do those things, and they can do them in moderation. I just don't happen to be one of them.
But what do you tell your daughter?
I tell my daughter that alcoholism is a genetic disease, that all the men in my family died from alcoholism, but not the women. That's not to say that she doesn't have the gene that will make her do that. So I say to her, if you drink, and you drink to the point you don't remember what you did or where you've been, then you're an alcoholic and you need to check yourself. But if you can drink and drink in moderation and still have decent conversations, don't fall out, don't throw up, then you have an opportunity to be a successful person that drinks.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things now, I mean, you wouldn't find any time in your life to do anything other than work, because when we're talking about what your addiction you've transferred it to now is your job.
Well, sort of. My job is one of them, golf is the other one. But, you know, I have the kind of job where there are a lot of people who have my job that are still addicts and still drink all day long because, I mean, out of a 12-hour acting day, if you're in a trailer, you probably work maybe an hour and a half out of a 12-hour day, because you go in and you work in 10-minute stints or 15-minute stints, and then you go back to your trailer for 2 hours while they set lights. Yes. So you have plenty of time to do wrong things.
Imagine if you're working on Star Wars, as you have been, with all those weird creatures, it would drive you to drink, wouldn't it?
Well, sometimes the first thing in the morning, you actually think you've had a drink when you walk in. You see all the faces and the tentacles and the colors on them. You know, I mean, there are actually some people that I've been in 3 Star Wars movies with that could walk on the stage right now, and I wouldn't know if they didn't have their masks on.
Well, what about, well, you mentioned golf there. I cannot believe, since I last saw you,
right,
you've got a hole-in-one.
Yes, finally.
In the terms of firsts, like first kiss or first romance or first whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? How's it really?
Hole-in-one?
Yeah.
You know what? It's one of the most amazing feelings you can have, because, I mean, you know like I know, that you're out there and you're toiling away for years and years and years, just hitting golf balls, and you finally get one. I've been close. I've had the ball roll by, almost go in. I've had it lip out, and it finally goes in. And the 3 guys I was playing with were talking. They didn't even see it.
It always happens.
I told them, I said, that went in the hole, and they all turned around and went, yeah, right. And they just kept talking. And sure enough, we got to the green, and there it was. But it's an amazing feeling. And as much as you want to say you did it on purpose, it's a total accident.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, you're aiming at the green, you hope you hit it, and all of a sudden, you've done the thing that you've tried to do all that time. You've actually hit it from one point A to point B, and it went in the hole.
But
and it's an amazing thing.
Samuel L. Jackson, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.